Hi, this is Queenie Villaganas, and in this video, I am going to discuss the Victorian period and some of the authors during this era. The Victorian era is the period between approximately 1820 and 1914, corresponding roughly but not exactly to the period of Queen Victoria's reign. It is characterized by a class-based society, a growing number of people able to vote, a growing state and economy, and Britain's status as the most powerful empire in the world. The period saw the British Empire grow to become the first global industrial power, producing much of the world's coal, iron, steel, and textiles. By this time, the role of the monarch was to reign rather than rule. This era also saw the revolutionary breakthrough in the arts and sciences which shaped the world as we know it today. These rapid transformations also led to many social changes with the birth and spread of political movements. Literature was an accessible and pervasive part of Victorian society. Studying it is crucial in understanding the attitudes and concerns of the people who lived during this era. Much of the writing during this time was a reaction to the rapidly changing notions of science, morality, and society. One of the leading novelists of the 19th century is George Eliot. George Eliot was the pen name of the English novelist Mary Ann Evans. She was born on November 22, 1819 and died on December 22, 1880. In 1850, Eliot began contributing to the Westminster Review, a leading journal for philosophical radicals, and later became its editor. In 1856, she began Scenes of Clerical Life, stories about the people of her native Warwickshire, which were published in Blackwood's magazine. Her first novel, Adam Bede, followed in 1859 and was a great success. Her novels, most famously Middlemarch, are celebrated for the realism and psychological insights. Middlemarch is considered to be Eliot's masterpiece. The realist work is a study of every class of society in the town of Middlemarch, from the landed gentry and clergy to the manufacturers and professional men, farmers, and laborers. The focus is on the thwarted idealism of its two principal characters. Certain characters in the novel, in particular Dorothea, Ladislaw, and some of the Middlemarchers, use or attempt to use aspects of Italian culture as hermeneutic devices in the readings of their fellow beings or the world around them. Italian life and culture enter the novel in a variety of ways, from vague prejudice to impassioned literary engagement and immediate sensory experience. The 1832 Reform Act is the most obvious and important political context for Middlemarch. The action of the novel takes place between 1892 and May 1832. The most direct way Middlemarch involves politics is through Mr. Brooke, who runs for Parliament himself. One plausible way to regard Middlemarch is as a historical novel. It has that further characteristic we expect of a historical novel, being decidedly and explicitly about the past. It covers a clearly dated period at the time of the first Reform Bill, and quite frequently takes pains to remind us that this period is a separate thing, historically removed. George Eliot's Middlemarch is marked by several central themes. These are the definition of a hero, the problem of vocation, the quest for and limits of knowledge, the limits of free will and moral agency, and marriage and compatibility. In George Eliot's novels, characters who yearn for greatness, to do something that will leave a mark so that the world will remember them, are frustrated by their own failures, fate, and society. The problem of vocation. The novel specifically examines the difficulty people face in finding satisfying work that also brings in sufficient income. People are limited in their vocations by sex and class. The quest for and limits of knowledge. People with intellectual natures often search for knowledge, which they feel will improve their lives or help them to better understand life's meaning. Sometimes, in the quest for knowledge is a search of immortality, in which people expect to make their marks on the world through invention or discovery. The limits of free will and moral agency. How much can a human being affect the course of his or her life? How much do the winds and currents of environment affect a person's final destination? How much do other people influence what a person is able to do in life? How much free will exists when people are at the mercy of their own backgrounds, which may work against their goals and plans? These are important questions in exploration of the limits of free will. Marriage and compatibility. All too often, people choose the wrong marriage partners. In some cases, they do not seriously consider whether they are compatible in their goals and outlooks. In other cases, they discover that they are not complementary in their needs and desires. For example, Dorothea marries Mr. Casaubon because she believes he has a great mind and she has the desire to do something great in the world. The following are the few characters that comprise the novel Middlemarch. Dorothea Brooke is a beautiful and intelligent young woman who wishes to do some great deed in the world that will benefit humanity. She has a passionate and enthusiastic nature expressed by a religious attitude in which she works to minimize self and seek the good for others. Edward Casaubon is a middle-aged clergyman who has inherited more money than is rightfully his because his family disowned his great aunt. He has an estate at Lowick but has lived alone his entire life. He dreams of attaining immortality by writing the key to all mythologies. Will Ladislaw is second cousin to Edward Casaubon, who is educating him to make up for the fact that his family was disowned. He is also a nonconformist, reluctant to settle on any career. Tertius Lydgate, a secondary protagonist, is an orphan partially raised by his aristocratic relatives who put him through school. He becomes a doctor and his intelligence and skill seem to mark him for a great career. Rosamond Vincy Lydgate is accounted by many as the most beautiful and accomplished female in Middlemarch. She means to marry well and does not want to marry a local boy. Nicholas Bulstrode is a self-righteous evangelical Christian who thinks that his mission in life is to convert other people into his brand of Christianity. He wields a lot of power in Middlemarch as a banker and philanthropist. Camden Fairbrother, a gifted preacher, praised by many for his goodness and wisdom. He doesn't judge others harshly and has deep understanding of human nature and the temptations that lead people to commit immoral acts. The novel is set in the fictional town of Middlemarch, England in 1830 to 1832. This novel is highly unusual. Although it is primarily a Victorian novel, it has many characteristics typical to modern novels. Critical reaction to Eliot's masterpiece work was mixed. A common accusation leveled against it was morbid and depressing tone. Most of the time, Eliot maintains a level of scientific development. Sometimes, though, she breaks out of that tone and becomes more sympathetic, like when she says, "For my part, I am very sorry for him." Middlemarch is told by a narrator who is omniscient, heterodiegetic, which means he was not a witness of the story, and extradiegetic, which means he does not belong to the same universe than the story he is telling us. Out of the diegesis at the same time. In the introduction of Middlemarch, the novel's omniscient narrator, who is wise, empathetic, and clear sighted, takes time to comment on the action of the story and its meaning, as well as comment of how epic life is not possible in modern times. In the rising action, Dorothea Brooke is an ardent and religious young woman who aspires to lead an epic life, is being courted by a handsome baronet, Sir James, but she chooses instead a middle-aged clergyman, Edward Casaubon, because she thinks he has a great mind and will broaden her intellectual and spiritual horizons. Casaubon has been compiling notes for 30 years for a treatise he called The Key to All Mythologies. Essentially, he is a failed scholar and writer. Will Ladislaw, a student and Casaubon's cousin, falls in love with Dorothea. He comes to Middlemarch to work for Mr. Brooke. Meanwhile, Fred Vincy does not inherit the wealthy Featherstone's money. Casaubon has a bad heart, and after an emotional scene with Dorothea, he has a heart attack. Not long after, he dies having left a codicil to his will, saying that if ever Dorothea ever marries Ladislaw, she will lose Casaubon's wealth and estate. A secondary protagonist, Tertius Lydgate, a gifted doctor who comes to Middlemarch hoping to participate in the medical reform and make an important scientific discovery, falls for the beautiful and charming narcissist Rosamond Vincy, who marries him to move up the social ladder. The shady character John Ruffles arrives at Middlemarch lurking around Mr. Bulstrode, a powerful evangelical Christian, philanthropist, banker, and the paternal uncle of Lydgate's wife, threatening to reveal the man's dark family secrets. It turns out Bulstrode made his first fortune by snatching the inheritance of the heirs of his first wife, now dead. Lydgate, a result of his marriage, teeters on the edge of bankruptcy. In the climax of the novel, Ruffles gets sick because of his drinking and is taken to Stone Court, a property Bulstrode recently bought. Ruffles is suffering from alcohol poisoning, and when Bulstrode doesn't follow Lydgate's treatment orders, he passively kills the patient. In the following action, the town soon finds out about Bulstrode's disreputable past, and Lydgate is under suspicion of taking a bribe. But Dorothea defends Lydgate. Rosamond clarifies a mix-up of whether or not Will loves her. Dorothea and Will determine to defy the codicil. In the resolution, Dorothea and Will marry, and Fred marries lower-class Mary Garth, whom he's always loved. Some of the morals of the novel are the following. Think carefully and get to know the other person well before getting married. In marriage, there should be love, understanding, and respect. Both Casaubon and Lydgate are were Both Casaubon and Lydgate are wrong to regard women as inferior and expect them to be submissive and docile. Human beings are all frail and flawed, and what should we live for if not to make life less difficult for each other? This is said and practiced by Dorothea, especially when she prioritizes her sense of justice, sees past her own anger, and assures Rosamond of Lydgate's innocence and others' belief in him. The selfish Rosamond, in return, helps clear the misunderstanding between her and Will. Love, sympathize, trust, and forgive. Return love with love. Return hate with love. Give others the benefit of the doubt and the chance to speak and explain themselves. Again, Dorothea is the embodiment of this spirit, who is willing to trust Lydgate when everyone else doubts him. Don't let prejudices and private feelings interfere with your judgments and actions. Lydgate sees Fairbrother's shortcomings and votes for someone else, even though they're friends. Mary criticizes Fred for his shortcomings and refuses to marry him until he meets her conditions, even though she loves him. Fairbrother represents Fred's interest even though he loves Mary. Dorothea speaks to Rosamond on behalf of Lydgate and consults her even though she thinks there's something between her and Will. We should be open. If there's anything wrong, we have to talk about it. Mrs. Bulstrode talks to Rosamond and Mr. Bulstrode talk to Lydgate about the state of their relationship. Otherwise, it goes nowhere. Mary always talks frankly to Fred about his faults. Fairbrother, Fred and Mary talks openly about their relationships and feelings. Take the responsibility of your own actions. If you wrong somebody, admit your fault and try to undo the wrong or pay for it. Examples are Fred and Mr. Bulstrode. Be independent. The models are the guards. Fred has to learn to become independent. Dorothea renounces wealth. Lydgate insists on relying on nobody and gets into trouble once he gets the loan from Bulstrode. Besides stressing the benefit of experience and disillusionment, George Eliot also sets out to make a point about the power of love. That obviously refers to Fred, whose love for Mary makes him strive to be a better man. And that ends our lesson for today. I hope you learned something from spending your time watching this video. This is Queenie Villaganas. Thank you for watching.